which testifies to the cultural and political irradiation of the peoples of those valleys, and so forth. The evolution so far traced followed different lines in the great two centres, Egypt and Mesopotamia, but at a certain moment on the eve of the historical era, to be precise, there are signs of a number of interchanges which, though their importance should not be overrated, do indicate an historical relationship presaging consequences of the utmost significance. So they had similar things they did, right? Cultures. They probably exchanged ideas and all that sort of stuff. Beliefs and all that sort of stuff. In these interchanges, Mesopotamia exerts a variety of influence on Egypt, not the other way around. But then again, it could go two ways, right? Both ways. Cylinder seals of Mesopotamian origin appear there, and soon new features develop. A number of artistic themes, such as figures of composite animals or animals intertwined or symmetrically arranged in pairs, or scenes of heroes overcoming lions or ships with the characteristic curved extremities, find their way from the valley of the two rivers, that's in Mesopotamia, to that of the Nile in Egypt, and even the Egyptian script in its origin and development, if not in its final forms, is seen to have been influenced by that developed earlier in Mesopotamia. See, so that's what we're trying to find and trying to prove to you, that they were influenced by these Mesopotamians. They took on this Semitic language, but later on they changed it, and they changed their script from hieroglyphics to a more demotic form, right? And maybe their language or the script or whatever they used went from right to left instead of left to right. Went from right to left and made some changes like that. Yeah. Moreover, a trend of influence in the opposite direction from Egypt to Mesopotamia had recently been noticed at that time. Gilbert had, in that era, that time of the writer, right? Gilbert found Mesopotamian seals bearing reliefs of houses with double doors decorated above the lintel with intertwined flower motifs, which seemed drawn from Egyptian themes and symbols. So they both influenced each other, right? Oh, we like that. Can we borrow that? Yeah, sure. We like your thing over here. Can we borrow that? Yeah, okay. We can, embrace it and put it into our culture. Maybe, improve on it a little bit. Okay, so there's a relationship between the pyramids and Mesopotamian temple towers. On the whole, however, the impression is left that at least that at the decisive moment of the transition to the historical era, within the substantially independent development of the two cultures, Mesopotamia played the preponderant role. So what does preponderant mean? They were the major player, right? Okay, they were the major influence. In the Near East, history does not emerge all at once. For several centuries, written documents exist, but they are not yet sufficiently numerous at that particular time. They're far and few in between, or extensive, or clear, to enable them, to allow them to make a coherent reconstruction of the course of history. After its initial phase, the development of writings was more or less parallel in the two valleys, the Mesopotamian and the Egyptian, right, or the Nile. From drawings, pictography, or pictographs, to conventionalized figures, ideography, from word values, ideograms, to phonetic values in the form of a syllabary, although ideograms remained in use. In Egypt, a further advance occurred by the principle of acrophony, that is, the pronunciation of only the first element of the syllable, so that alphabetic values were reached, or are reached. But this principle is not generalized, and the syllabic or ideographic values persisted side by side with the alphabetic. The next great step forward would be in the invention of a systematic alphabet, but at least a millennium had yet to pass before that came about. Thus, at the dawn of history, the ancient Orient already had a long life of experience behind it. Indeed, the greater part of its life, from cavern to village and city, from hunting to pastoral and agricultural existence, its social, political, religious and artistic activities had undergone a vast process of evolution. There's great changes that occurred, right? They swapped ideas. Okay, and make things better. Instead of running after their food and chasing it and end up starving because you couldn't catch it, they came up with this brilliant idea. Why don't we grow our own food? Why don't we catch some of those animals, domesticate them and keep them in pens, and milk them for their products, pull their teats or whatever and get some milk and make some cheese, all that sort of stuff, right? They became very self-sufficient, and so forth. Thus, at the dawn of history, the ancient Orient already had a long life of experience behind it. Indeed, the greater part of its life, from cavern to village and city, from hunting to pastoral and agricultural existence, its social, political, religious and artistic activities had undergone a vast process of evolution, or great change, great development, adaptation, adaptation, etc., whatever, however you want to put it. At this point, history takes over the narrative and carries it on its own conclusion. And you have part 2 of the book, the components. The Sumerians, Mesopotamian civilization. It could be said, paradoxically, that our knowledge of Sumerian civilization had come about by chance. The archaeologists who began to explore Mesopotamia about a century ago had an entirely different object in mind, namely to discover the remains of the Babylonians and Assyrians, in whom much was known already through the Bible and classical authors. In Babylonia, however, what came to light was the existence of not one but two peoples, not one but two civilizations. They did indeed find the Babylonians, but they also found the monuments and documents of a people hitherto unknown, a people who had preceded the Babylonians and Assyrians, and who had created the most ancient of the historical cultures known, that of the Sumerians. The two cultures were found in close association, but the difference of language furnished a clear criterion, and although there was no rejection of the close relationship, the distinction was extended to the field of culture, so that experts spoke, and still usually speak, not only of two peoples but of the two cultures. Is this entirely justifiable? Examination of the historical documents, especially those dating from the earliest period, revealed that the two languages were not always and everywhere used strictly in accordance with the ethnic membership. There were Sumerians who wrote in the Semitic tongue, and vice versa. The distinction in the use of the two languages can more accurately be regarded as dependent upon locality, period, and subject matter. In general, Sumerian was the older language and the language of learning, and it persisted in religious and literary texts even after the eclipse of the corresponding ethnic element, only gradually giving way to the spoken language that finally prevailed, or probably followed it, or took over from it, right? Babylonian and Assyrian. Hence, the distinction between the two cultures is justified only in part. Despite the differences in the origin and the initial phases, they are closely connected, probably even closely related somehow. Thus, the civilization which one finds is not so much either Sumerian or Babylonian and Assyrian, it is first and foremost Mesopotamian. The historical outlines. First, then, to determine the bounds of area and time. The Sumerian civilization first appears in history during the 3rd millennium BC. However, this is not the true starting point, for it is simply the beginning of the historical period. Everything points to the conclusion that if the documents were forthcoming, we should be able to trace this people much farther back. However, that may be. At the dawn of history, the Sumerians are already established in the land which saw the development of their civilization. They are already organized in small urban communities. The situation resembles that of the Greek city-states and the later Italian communes. It would appear that at first the city communities were governed by assemblies presided over by groups of elders. An American scholar, Jacobson, that sounds familiar, has called this system primitive democracy, and says of it, our material seems to preserve indications that prehistoric Mesopotamia was organized politically along Democratic Alliance. What if that's at Jacobson? That was the top Syrian archaeologist. Yeah, I think it might have been that guy. And he goes on about the indications which they had that they point to a form of government in which the normal run of public affairs was handled by a council of elders. Yeah, he's the top Assyriologist, that's what we're thinking of. But ultimate sovereignty resided in a general assembly comprising all members, or perhaps better, all adult free men of the community. This assembly settled conflicts arising in the community, decided on such major issues as war and peace, and could, if need arose, especially in a situation of war, grant supreme authority, kingship, to one of its members for a limited period. Possibly this account overestimates the power of the assembly, which frequently acted only in a consultative capacity to the ruler of the city-state, but undoubtedly it did impose certain limitations on the ruler's authority. The important point to be noted is that this leader is regarded as only the earthly representative of the true sovereign, namely the tutelary god of the city, or that main god of the city, or that ruling god of the city, however you want to put it, from the very beginning, or maybe the main god of that city, but then again it might have had several. From the very beginning, Sumerian government is theocratic in character. The city belongs to one god. Oh, there you go. There's one god, right? Even though other gods may also be worshipped in it. But let me just say that. And this one god is an absolute god, or lord, who expresses his incontrovertible will by means of portents and presages. The earthly king's task consists in interpreting the will of the heavenly king and keeping him content and well disposed, keeping him happy, so that he may not cease to protect his faithful citizens. He might not cease to protect his faithful citizens, so they've got to butter him up, keep him happy, right? Hence the human honours the divine ruler by erecting temples and gratifies him by bringing prosperity to the people by the excavation of canals to control the waters of the great rivers, to prevent floods and to irrigate the sandy soil. The ideal, which the Sumerians set themselves, is one of peace, ordered by faith and labour, or belief in this God, right? Following him, and also work. Okay? And they remain constant to this ideal through all the vicissitudes of their long history. So the ups and downs, I guess. Good times, the bad times. We may ignore the list of the ancient kings with their fabulously long reigns, which are intended to associate the reigns of humans with those of gods and heroes. The Sumerian king list has no historical value, even though it may include the names of historical personages. Okay, so how could it have no historical value if it's ancient history? Go figure that one. The oldest surviving Sumerian inscriptions date from the reign of Mesilim of Kish, who lived about 2600 BC. He has left us a few lines reporting the construction of a temple for the god Ningirsu. We have more knowledge of the city community of Lagash, which has left many documents. Here, the founder of a dynasty, Nanchi, also built a temple to Ningirsu, so evidently the erection of temples is not a casual labour, but appears to have been regarded as the first duty of a Sumerian sovereign or ruler. To build temples and dig canals, these were the works of peace, which were the kingly ideal from the beginning. It is useful to consider the character of the oldest royal inscriptions we possess. In no way can they be regarded as contributions to history in the modern sense of the word, as narratives of events interpreted in terms of causes, characteristic features, and consequences, and so forth. And it talks about Ningirsu, the hero of Enlil, had given to Urakagina the kingship of Lagash, and had made his power dwell in the hearts of 36,000 men. He made a decree, or a law, set of laws, from that time. He spoke the word to his king, Ningirsu. He spoke the word as King Ningirsu had spoken. From the boat he released the boatmen, from the ass or the donkey or the mule, and the sheep their shepherd. In the irrigated land of Ningirsu, out to the sea, The overseer was no more. When the house of a great man stands near the house of the king's estate, and that great man says, I wish to sell it, if the king buys, he shall pay money to his heart's satisfaction. The king will protect the mother that is in distress. The mighty man shall not oppose the naked and the widow. This decree has Urukagina made with the aid of Ningirsu. So it was the decree, was the law, and it had to be followed. A bit like those ham rabbi ones, I suppose. Okay, so we're going to leave that there. We hope that you found that was very interesting. If you did, then subscribe to our channel. Give us a thumbs up or a like. And then add your comments below this particular video. And then you know what to do. Go and share this video with all your family, friends, and others. History buffs. Maybe your kids are students studying this sort of stuff. Go share it with your neighbours, your church friends, etc. They may need to know this. Well, we feel they shouldn't know this history of the original ancients, and where their myths, their stories, which were adopted and adapted and became these similar biblical ones, okay, originated from.